All right, everyone. It's likely that virtually all of you watched the Joe Rogan podcast the other day, which involved Tim Pool and Jack, as well as Twitter's Jack Dorsey, and his, I guess, lawyer or consort or something like that. I'm not exactly sure why she was there because she barely spoke, and it seems like she was meant to be Jack's punching bag. That appears to be the consensus reality that people experienced when watching this. It was really good. It was, just as good as the Alex Jones. Rogan's really coming into his element by touching on some of these issues related to tech censorship and stuff. He needs to do more of that. His podcast will grow very, very quickly. Like even, he's already got millions of fans, but, go into the stratosphere. A great business proposition for him, I suppose. Now, this is sort of a redo of the first interview he did a couple weeks back with Jack Dorsey, where it was mostly softball questions, and he got into tech censorship briefly, and Jack sort of deflected, and he never brought it up again for the most part. And a lot of people left a sour taste in their mouth. He got ratioed on his video there. It was damage control mode. This one was way better, and that's because they brought Tim Pool aboard. By the way, you should definitely check out his stuff. He's on Twitter and YouTube and everywhere else. He's a journalist, which means, he's, on the front lines waiting to be deplatformed, basically. He's not particularly conservative, I would say, looking at the things that he's said and the views that he appears to have. He's center-left in many regards. In some regards, I'd call him, a total liberal. He appears to have more of just a libertarian tinge. When it comes to free press, free speech, expression, things of that nature, he's more on the libertarian end, I would say. So he's sort of like a rare actual left libertarian, at least in some ways. Mostly they don't exist. Mostly they're just people who want to smoke pot, but I don't know if he does that. I mean, he has the skater hat and stuff like that, so maybe. But anyway, he completely destroyed Jack Dorsey. Long story short, just encapsulating it in a sentence, Tim Pool crushes Jack Dorsey on censorship should have been like the actual operative title of the podcast itself. It was basically nonstop jabs from Tim Pool, most of which landed, because here's the thing. Jack Dorsey is anti-charismatic. When you look at him speak, it's like a boring monotone. He drones on and on. There's no emotion in it. And so he's sitting there. Tim Pool's saying, well, what about this element of bias or this case where someone has been banned for no reason? Why is it that Antifa is allowed to spread violence on Twitter uninhibited, but the Proud Boys get kicked off? Why is it that Gavin gets kicked off, despite the fact that he's dissociated himself completely from this group that's not even listed as a hate group? Under any official banner, well, people can dox and raid and do crazy shit and literally foment violence. Your double standards are showing. And Jack's like, well, and if I had $1 for every time he fucking said this stupid one line, we're working on it. We realize that we fucking suck, but we're working on it. That we can't just change the rules in response to the fact that they don't work. We have to have 5 focus groups. This is why corporations fail. They become inefficient and slow, and they're incapable of changing things. Like MySpace, long ago. They change their format, everything about it. People start hemorrhaging off the site. They're like, fuck this, it's no longer fun. It takes them a long time to actually sort of revert and address people's concerns. YouTube almost had a moment like this with the Cosmic Panda channel layout. Most of you don't know anything about this, so you don't remember it. Back around 2010, I think it was, or 2009, they completely changed the way YouTube looked, and they called it Cosmic Panda. And it was so poorly received, and people were telling them, like, no, we don't want this. It's non-functional, it's dumb, it looks terrible. They said, oh, no. After the fact, weeks later, they're like, oh, this was only ever meant to be temporary, so we're patching it a bit, don't worry. And then they very quickly rolled out what you now know as the more modern layout of YouTube. They patched up their patch very quickly because they realized it was a good idea. They did it fast enough to keep their site afloat. They could have destroyed YouTube. YouTube could not be a thing anymore if they'd made the wrong decision at Google. That's really true. They weren't yet hegemonic. Almost, but not quite. Some competitor would have come along and gobbled them up, probably. Tim Pool, who I have great respect for, did what Rogan himself didn't largely do. In fact, towards the end, it almost looked like Rogan felt sad for Jack Dorsey losing so badly on the issue and being exposed for the fraud that he really is. That's what he is. And actually was like trying to be conciliatory and saying, well, no, I don't think free speech is going away. And I get the sense that they're really trying, and Tim Pool didn't seem completely taken in. Now, there were a couple times that I found myself disagreeing. Tim Pool didn't go hard enough at moments. Like, he was like, well, you know, I'm sorry for getting emotional at the outset. It's like, fuck, yeah, we should be emotional. The First Amendment is fundamentally being trod underfoot by a bunch of corporations that take taxpayer subsidies. Yes, you should be angry. And yeah, don't apologize to Jack Dorsey. He doesn't deserve the apology. I understand he's like trying to keep up sort of that image of, you know, I'm able to have a coherent conversation, trying not to go too hard all in, because then the press will come and the legacy media and say, well, unhinged conspiracy theorist Ream's successful Silicon Valley benevolent progressive, or something like that. That'd be like Huffington Post's article. And it was really, really funny, because you saw some people, like one of those people, free speech activists, like on YouTube, on Twitter, occasionally you'll see people that have free speech activist listed under their description, and yet everything they post is like far left censorious bullshit. They're like, oh, far right conspiracy theorist Tim Pool is spouting off misinformation about Twitter, harassing conservatives or something. It's not about conservatives. I really, really wish people would stop using... That's the other thing. The one sticking point, the biggest one that I had with the whole thing on Tim Pool's end, stop using the term conservative. Because fundamentally, like a person like me, I'm not a conservative at all. I fit in more with the progressives on some issues. I get flack for that. I don't use the term conservative because fuck conservatism. It doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't even exist at this point. There is no... It's a false dichotomy within politics. It's about those who want free... So boil it down to its simplest, lowest common denominator. This is a struggle between those who think that we should have an American-style internet where there is free speech, and those who want a Euro-style internet. Jack Dorsey's openly talking about adapting Twitter's terms of service to the UN Charter instead of to the Constitution, despite being a U.S. firm, because, oh, we have a global audience. Fuck that. Who cares? You're a U.S. fucking business. And then they come out, and this was even crazier. They were talking about, oh yeah, but fundamentally, which user was it that there was like a CNN story? And it was Alex Jones. In the wake of all those other sites banning him, CNN runs a hit piece and is like, well, here's examples of him breaking the rules, and then they take him down. Oh, that's such an excuse. Oh, can't you see through that? What a disingenuous hack job this was. Yeah, and then watch what you'll see, and then the Pool points out the Data Society report and how it's full of bullshit, and it is. I was listed as an alt influencer or what is it, alt-right adjacent or some bullshit newspeak propaganda term from the MSM Now from Becca Lewis's report there. I was listed prominently there. I was part of the debate with Spencer that they don't mention me in, but it was the first fucking whole paragraph of their entire report that I was involved in. And according to their little graph, I'm one of the people with the most connections within this so-called influence network simply because I'm forthcoming and willing to go on people's shows and talk to them and host them and give them an interview and shit. I haven't been slowed down in growth. And I pointed out part of this might be the fact that I'm so diversified on other platforms that if I'm being throttled in related videos on YouTube, it might not have that much of an effect because I'm on Gab and I'm on Twitter and I'm on Minds and I'm on BitChute and I'm on DTube/Steemit and all of these other services. I have blogs, WordPress and Blogspot dedicated to my work that I might be partially immune. By the way, eventually there's going to be a website and other fixtures of my little mini empire too. And that's the way creators have to go. It's no longer, well, you can make YouTube videos and have a Twitter for your own personal amusement and get by as a creator. It's more like you have to have your fucking hands in everything. You have to be more diverse than any fucking brick-and-mortar corporation at this point just to survive, because otherwise one person decides they don't like you and apparently you disappear from the face of the earth. He points out, and this was the most chilling though, Tim Pool comes out and asks about, well, you know, Chase Bank and MasterCard and PayPal and the fiscal platforms are starting to deperson people too, and you've helped to start this basically. Silicon Valley at the communications level, the level of social media like Twitter, video hosting, YouTube and stuff, started a situation where it became fashionable, and he used the term over and over, snowflake in an avalanche. Like the snowflake didn't cause the avalanche, they all collectively cause it, you're just one snowflake. And that, it was definitely some 3D chess right there. Good on him for using that term. I have a feeling that was chosen deliberately. Basically the idea is that because those firms have begun depersoning people, that the fiscal groups had come under pressure to do the same thing, or have used that as an excuse to do the same thing for their own agenda. Definitely. And Jack Dorsey's response was basically, yeah, there's problems. We're working on it. Yeah, this isn't the direction we want to be going. It was funny, like 3 or 4 times he says, well, this isn't the direction we want to be going. We realize that we're failing. We're not doing a good job. Then fucking change it, Jack. Why don't you fucking change it? And why don't you lean on these other losers like Mark Zuckerberg to do the same thing? You're never going to get him to change his platforms. He's unrepentant. He's like, oh, censorship, that's a great thing. That means family friendly. Propaganda means right think. Oh my goodness. That's how Zuckerberg works. Jack is just, I don't know whether he's more honest and therefore more forthcoming, and he's just like sort of bumbling around, and he's kind of ineffectual and maybe powerless in his own company at this point. I don't know whether it's that or whether he's being dishonest and he's just sort of mumbling his way through it because he knows he done goofed. And he wants to come out, he wants to like repair Twitter's brand because he knows he has to do damage control or something. It was crazy. So it's definitely a good show. Link in the description, of course, for the 10 of you that probably haven't already seen it. Definitely worth watching. Tim Pool completely destroys Jack. The only other thing I would say that I had a beef with is that Tim Pool, and I think Rogan as well, intoned that there were no real alternatives to these sites. There are. There's an alternative Twitter. It's called Gab. It's swiftly growing, especially now that it has Dissenter. Shit, how many comments were there on the actual live stream through Dissenter? I think there were thousands of them. They're using it for that one Marvel movie that's got people pissed off because Rotten Tomatoes decided to shut off comments and user ratings on it. So, well, they're unhelpful. Yeah, because you're afraid that people say, look, I didn't like the movie. And so you got paid off by Marvel, probably, to do that. And so on Dissenter, there's like 4,000 or 5,000 fucking comments. I think top was Sargon saying, oh, I can speak freely here. Wow, what a wonderful invention. You've got Minds.com, which is a perfectly acceptable Facebook alternative. And they pointed it out that that's not really, it's not conservative run. It's not on the right. It's more like just, libertarian. I would say the same about Gab. And then BitChute, yes, he is, because of its new style of architecture. Look, Jack spent half of this interview rambling about how wonderful it was weird to see him talk about the blockchain and cryptocurrency and stuff in a positive way, like Twitter is going to be like that. Dude, you already have that sort of stuff being employed by some of these sites. BitChute is able to survive despite the bulk of videos that it has because its overhead is lower because it uses P2P software. And they're developing more sort of things as you go on. Patreon's not a monopoly technically. Subscribestar exists, and it works. Unlike Patreon and unlike Maker Support, Subscribestar managed to rise above their attempt to deplatform it on 3 or 4 different levels, managed to get around that and is apparently still functional. People are donating to me every day on Subscribestar. It's actually working fairly well, yes. It's a stable replacement for Patreon, or I would say a compatriot to it. I mean, I'm going to keep using Patreon in the meantime because there are some people that don't want to use Subscribestar or whatever. If they want to use it, then they have the ability, but the amount on there is slowly dwindling. The amount on Subscribestar is slowly rising, so it's like at some point it's like it's an even sum game, I suppose. I like the crowdfunded aspect of the internet. Crypto's great. Selling merchant as actual physical things, like my books, that's the main income that I make. By the way, I'll have to talk about Amazon. They're joining these other tech firms in the censorship arena to at least some extent. They're more hesitant. They're more like YouTube. Those two are more hesitant. Twitter and Apple and Facebook and Instagram and stuff, they're whole hog. They love censorship. Like, they actually applaud censorship and use propaganda to prop it up. YouTube's more like they half-ass it, they try to straddle the line because they don't want to alienate people, and then Amazon largely just remains silent and outside of the fray, but I guess they made an exception for Tommy Robinson, which is quite negative in my opinion. That's about all. Peace out.